right. Let's call the meeting to order. Start with roll call.
Commissioner Allen?
Present.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Siragusa? Here. Commissioner Roberts? Here. Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr?
Here.
And Mayor Pinkinen.
Here. All righty, thank you. Item 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda. Come that way, come that way. All looks good. Good, thank you. Item 3, study items. 3.1, legislative update from Kurt Rogo. Kurt?
Yes. Oh, they're small. You guys getting efficient? All right. Top issues at the Capitol right now. We're over halfway through. Committee work is, for the most part, is done. Your traditional committee work of studying a lot of bills is over with as of last week. So from now on, it's going to be a lot of conference committee reports where they need to come back together and discuss the issues. But the top 4 issues: education, tax cuts, workforce, economic development. Really no surprise. Education, economic development are always top issues in campaigns. And so I'm just going to give you a little overview on the education stuff, just so you know. But this is probably the biggest item at the Capitol right now. The House sent out an education proposal just a few weeks ago, $500 million proposal, 2 different bills, $2,500 pay increase, minimum pay raise for teachers. There's probably a schedule that goes with that. $50 million for schools on the below average local tax revenue, $300 million for school districts on a per pupil basis. And then the tax credits are going to be a big discussion. They have it broke down in 2 bills on the House side there. $5,000 tax credit and also a $2,500 tax credit for students educated by other means. So it'd be like homeschool or private school, something like that. The House sent this over and said, Senate, don't touch it. What happens? Senate touches it. They not to be outdone, they take it up to $630 million. Now, I've seen other media reports coming out of the Capitol saying it's as high, $700 million. So teacher pay raise, you can see the schedule that they're looking at there, anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 depending on your tenure. Also school choice, that's kind of what they tagged it as. They upped the tax credits for private schools. So it's really going to come down to what they want the tax credit to be. The Senate traditionally has always been about the vouchers, particularly Senator Treat, who's the leader in the Senate, pushing for vouchers. I can only imagine that discussion is coming up, but the House isn't going to go for it. But they're going to have to come to a number on education. The reason it's so important is because they're not going to be able to move on the budget until the education budget is over with. They're negotiating that as we speak. They started last week, and hopefully we'll see something pop out maybe by the end of the month, first week of May, hopefully, or maybe they might unveil it as they do the budget. But also the Senate is pushing maternity leave. I don't know what it is right now, but they're saying 8 weeks. School safety, as you can imagine, is a huge issue all across the country. They're looking at trying to give a fund to schools to draw from to harden the buildings, locks, cameras. There's a lot of variety of security systems out there, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. No surprise there. Also, the Senate's pushing this Oklahoma Teacher Corps Aid Program, mentoring program, kind of an annual stipend to mentoring teachers, $500. Child care in schools is a big issue, and certification payments. I think this is an issue they're trying to bring back into the schools where teachers can draw on some federal funds, I believe is what that is. But anyway, a lot to discuss in education. Hopefully they can iron that out in the next couple weeks. Tax cuts. I just threw this up there as an example. The Senate or the House is they're using the education proposal as a little bit of an entry into the hey, if we're going to do the Senate's education plan, then we need to look at tax cuts. And Of course, the Senate isn't interested in tax cuts right now. It's not that they're against tax cuts. I think they're looking at maybe a bigger picture down the road of maybe someday eliminating the income tax. I think that would be a lofty goal that Treat has talked about in the past. But tax cuts are going to be on the table of discussion. Last session, the House sent the Senate every variety of tax cut you can imagine. Grocery, income, corporate, sent them all different levels, like 8 different pieces of legislation. The Senate did not address any of them. So, but I think they're definitely going to be on the table this year. The state is flush with money, plenty of revenue, plenty of savings. You just can't escape it, and the governor's pushing for that as well. Workforce. This is actually the exact same slide that you saw when I was here last. The governor's executive order on workforce transformation task force is still ongoing. They're actually supposed to have something already out. I think the deadline was April 15th. I just now remembered that. But I think there was talk about extending that deadline, so that probably happened. But everybody's keeping an eye on Senate Bill 621, which is where all of the reworking of how we deal with the federal workforce money is dealt with. That's all going to be built into 621. And they're looking at modeling it after Ohio and Texas. There's a few other states, but I think Ohio has one of the best programs on how they deal with workforce. So they're trying to create an organization that just really oversees and can be responsible for all workforce money throughout the state, instead of having these different pockets of where the money goes and nobody owns the system. So economic development, big issue. Well, first bullet there, the Senate created a select committee on business retention and economic development just a few weeks ago. This is a big item. The catalyst for this was the fact that Oklahoma has been on the list for these huge mega projects like Panasonic, Volkswagen, mega sites, Mid-America Industrial Park, and we're not landing them. Tesla is what started all this. We're not landing them, and the Senate is growing weary of that. I know Commerce is working their tail off to try to land these, and the legislature in general is concerned about it. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? So the Senate created this special committee, and they're going to be meeting at least monthly until the remainder of the year. And so Commerce has already been on the schedule. They're going to bring in others to just kind of have a conversation on what are we doing wrong? What are the tools that we need? So they're going to really dive into the economic development of everything. So right now, Panasonic is back on the list. They're looking at site number 2. And in addition to the LEAD Act, they're asking for an additional $245 million in incentives. It's pretty high. We'll see what happens there. One was just announced last week that was uncovered. They've been working on it for a while. They always have these code names for these projects. And Enid, which has a wind farm just outside of Enid at Hunter, Chisholm View, yeah, they own that one. They're looking at developing a solar panel manufacturing facility on the Tulsa Port over by Inola. One of the problems is it's not just us. There's other states that they're looking at. I believe Ohio is one of those states. There's another one. But everybody believes that Oklahoma has the #1 pole position on that site. And I know that there's some investment on researching that property ongoing right now. They're looking at an incentive package from the legislature right now. It's not put together, but it'd be less than what Panasonic is looking for. So we have 2 projects right in front of us again. And everybody wants to land it, but everybody's a little worried about the incentive packages, and I understand that. And so that'll be all over the news. Hopefully, the solar issue, hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll hear something. I don't know what the timeline is on Panasonic, but here we are. I mean, we've been waiting for these mega projects for a long time, and it's going to be exciting if we can ever land one. All right. This is the first of the top 3 issues that municipalities are looking at and OML has their radar set up for. The first one is House Bill 2191, eminent domain. This is basically redefining eminent domain, which is concerning to public groups such as this. Actually mentions economic development in the bill as not a reason for eminent domain or public use, which is a little bit concerning. A lot of new language in the bill. There was a procedural move made on this legislation just last week so that it would not go to the governor's desk once the Senate passed it, so it's going to end up in conference. The Senate author has already expressed a desire to maybe try to study this a little bit. He's a freshman senator, so it's probably going to be the first big project that he's going to be taking on to maybe study the eminent domain laws. But they've tapped the brakes on this, and everybody's keeping an eye on it, House Bill 2191. The next one.
Kurt, could you also tell us, I think you did maybe, that didn't come from OML. OML's not supporting
Correct.
that one, right?
OML does not support this. There are some attorney groups that support this. Oh, wait, hold on. On the, uh-oh, how'd I go back? There's probably some, I don't know who's, OML's not pushing this. There's probably, well, I don't know where it's coming from. Not the other ones I do, not this one particularly.
Well, we've become very familiar lately, like with the Call Lake project.
Yeah.
And we think it's already kind of favorable for property owners, so, and it should be.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure what's
Yeah.
changing, but I'm glad to hear it's tapping the brakes.
Yeah, they're tapping the brakes on this one, which is good. Everybody was worried about it, and
Is it a result of the turnpike going in? Is that what driving that
there
whole
we go.
thing?
That's what, yeah, this is, thank you for joining my memory. This is a result. I'm looking at the authors, and Kevin West is in the Oklahoma City area, probably takes in a little bit. You're correct. This is, I just thank you for reminding me. This is probably turnpike related.
I'm here for you.
Well, thank you. And there was a lot of
Today.
bills, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you just sit and think and you're not under stress and pressure, you can figure out where some of these issues come from.
Right.
And there were a lot of bills this year introduced on the turnpike topic. A lot of people weren't happy at how they handled that. So, yeah, this is a result of that. Thank you. All right, I do know where this one came from. So this is adding PTSD to workers' compensation coverage for county, municipal, state employees, state employed first responders, that's what I should say, suffering from PTSD. Obviously, it's a very, that is a concerning health issue. And nobody can disagree with that. It's just that when you broaden that rider on workers' compensation policies, you're going to increase the cost of the policy. And that's going to mean increased cost to the city, counties, taxpayers. So it's a slippery slope, probably for a good cause, but it all comes down to cost. What do you want to pay for? So this is very concerning to municipalities, and we're just trying to keep an eye on this one. The last one is House Bill 2373, which increases the liability limits throughout various portions of the government or Governmental Tort Claims Act. Some cases doubling and tripling those limits. So again, this is another insurance-related premium cost to the taxpayers. This one and the other, the PTSD is, coming from your attorney world. Also, I think the unions have stepped in pushing for that as well as part of their benefit packages. And so, but this one went dormant as of last week. It didn't get heard, I believe, in committee, in the Senate committee. But the reason it's still on the radar, this is the kind of language, given the history of the authors, if they really do believe in this, they'll put it in another bill. Particularly maybe the House author, since it was his bill. But anyway, it's just, Tort Claims Act there's always legislation dealing that, and that could easily be added, so.
I don't think we'll think that's good I don't think that's coming from cities, so.
Yeah.
Or almonds.
Okay.
And as you pointed out, the taxpayers would have to pay 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Or be subject to higher limits, I guess.
Yeah. So just trying to keep costs down. Legislative deadlines, like I said earlier, we have the formal committee process is done. The only thing that's left are going to be conference committees from this point, and appropriations and budget, which has a deadline of this week, but they're always going to meet. There's always committee meetings, but the formal ones that we've always seen has ended. So the next big deadline is April 27th to hear bills on the opposite floors of each other. House bills on the Senate floor, Senate bills on the House floor. And so the next this week and next week is solid floor work, hitting that deadline. And then, of course, May 26th, sine die by 5 p.m. They could end a week early. They could end a couple days early. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's probably been about 10 years since I see it go to 5 p.m. that day. And usually when it does, it's chaos. But it still happens now and then. But that's all I have. Any questions?
This is a great opportunity for the commission. Kurt is our guy that works to get legislation that we find favorable and to help make legislation that the city doesn't think is favorable go away. You work with OML, you have a long history of relationships with
Right.
our
Yeah, Mike
State
Fina, who runs
delegation
the
and-
organization, Thomas Lewis is their lobbyist. So, I'm at the Capitol every day, and I'm running into Thomas. We talk often, want to see what's on his radar, and we're always swapping information, and a lot of times it's just having conversations with others and keeping it going. All right.
I think it'll be interesting what they find, or their findings, if they find anything, on that committee that's looking into why we're not corralling these big economic development things.
Right.
They'd have to be painfully truthful with themselves, and I don't know that they're capable of that. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody.
So they just named the chairman of the group is Senator Treat. Of course, he has other responsibilities of running the Senate, but the vice chairman is a new senator who's becoming a rock star, Kristen Thompson, from the Oklahoma City area, I think Edmond area. And so she's taking it on. She has a construction background, business background, and you do have to have those public meetings, but they need to have some other meetings off to the side to really get the gist of what's going on. I've also suggested to her that we need to be bringing in some site locators, which is kind of your wholesale end of, that's where that's the conversation that takes place at the CEO level. When the CEO of a major corporation says, we need to expand to other states, they call the site locator, and then it's the site locator that calls Commerce or our local folks as to where that company could land. Nobody ever gets to see the site locators. So it's the site locators that know what we're doing wrong in Oklahoma and where maybe Alabama is doing it right, or some other states. And the legislature never gets to visit with those people. So I've suggested that we bring some of those in. But yeah, they're going to, our own Brent Kissling was in committee last week answering all those tough questions, and did a great job representing the Department of Commerce, and they're going to be back. So, anyway. All right, good. That's all I got. Thank you.
Appreciate the update as always. Thank you. All right, item 3.2, quarterly VDA update from Mr. Mike Cooper, Mr. 41 himself.
Yeah, 47. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager, City Attorney. First, I wanted to say I know that this was probably one of your last meetings that I'll brief on Advanced Development Authority or advanced issues, things that I do. So I appreciate all the time that you've spent on the council, because it's a lot of time and commitment from you and your family, but it's also important for the city. You've done everything you could to make Enid a better place, and you've done that very well. Jerry, you worked with me when we were young men, And so I know it's at least 8 years. I don't know the exact time that you've been on the council, but I know it's at least that. So, hey, thank you for that. I know the city really appreciate what you do. So I really have enjoyed working with you back then and now. So I really appreciate that. The other thing, I know our mayor-elect is in here, so I look forward to working with you. And I know George has probably told you I'm going to call you and talk to you so much you can just ignore me or shove me under. But I look forward to working with you. It's going to be a really exciting time. So appreciate that. But just briefly kind of go over some things. And we had Advanced Development Authority meeting this morning, and so I'll kind of go through that. And Mayor, have you mentioned the trophy?
I have not yet.
Okay. Well, I'll say my little thing up front about that is again, the Altus Trophy, which is the Air Education Training Command Commander's Trophy, recognizes outstanding community support. The last 2 years, we've come in second every year, and this year we won it. So what that means is we have an excellent community-based relationships. No one would argue that. I can go anywhere in the country, and I've been over the national organization, Association Defense Communities, and look to us to mirror how they could be. So thank you to everybody, because all of you in this room make that relationship better. So we really appreciate all of that, and I think you would echo that as well. Absolutely. So Mayor-elect, Mayor, Council, what we do essentially, what do we do? Our focus is how do we assist the Air Force and advance, increase mission, reduce costs. We always focus on infrastructure, quality of life. My job is to stay close to them, to understand what their priority are, and within reason, how can we assist doing that? How can we focus to help them increase mission, reduce costs? Because at the end of the day, if we do that and do that effectively, then their mission is still here, it grows, things are going good. But also, as you see a lot of and I'll talk about those projects in a moment, but generally it's things that not only helps them, but it helps us too. Same way on the quality of life issues. If we're improving our medical facilities, what we have to offer here, our education opportunities, whether it's public or higher ed, if we're improving those and looking at them, making sure we have the facilities and the things that they need offered, then that's good for us too. It's also good for them. So anyway, just to kind of highlight what we did last year real quick. As you know, we got two $4 million grants to help with the Call Lake project. City staff had a lot to do with that, but we were able to, Congressman Lucas worked with us to insert those in the bill. It took all year to make sure those stayed in. But anyway, so you got additional funding for that. In addition to that, with the things that we're doing out at Woodring Airport, which stem from us a few years back when we expanded the length of the runway, we continue to make improvements so they can do what they do as they tear out the middle runway. So we got $4.5 million from the pooled financing at the state level, got about $180,000 for engineering money from the Strategic Military Planning Commission, and we got a Defense Community Infrastructure program. DSIP is what they call it. It's a program we created from the Association of Defense Communities to be able to have Congress and the Defense Department leverage state and community dollars to help them do things that they couldn't do otherwise, because they don't, even though they spend a lot of money in defense, there's still a lot of requirements they can't get done every year. So this was the way they leverage approximately $100 million. That program lasts for 10 years. So if last year was around 95 million, I think. This year it's about 112 million total that's out there. But then if you leverage those dollars from the federal level with state and communities, you can see you're really making a lot of good effort on a lot of projects that have something to do with military value, resiliency, and quality of life. So we did get that one. We'll continue to focus on that. I know the community will have another DSIP program this year. It'll be for your Ames Water Project. I think it's still to be determined the amount, but we'll work with the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation and the Installation Secretary in the Pentagon for the Air Force. He's the one that looks at it, makes recommendations to the Secretary of Defense. And so, as Scott knows, I know last year that project rated real high. So while we didn't get it, it rated high. So we'll continue to do that. Today in Advanced Development Authority, every year we try to determine what's our priority project dealing with the state, the Oklahoma Strategic Military Planning Commission. So what we've decided, there was a program in DOD to fix and repair or replace schools on military installations. The same thing was done about 10 or 15 years ago. There was Congress asked the services, what does it take to fix schools on base? Is it replace them, repair them, or what is it and what's the cost? Well, since then, they've been putting money each year, and they've actually gone from worst to best, and so they started it with the worst. And the first two schools that got replaced in that program about 10 years ago was Lawton Fortsville, got a new one, and so did Fort Riley in Kansas. So now we're at about 68th on that list, I believe. And now it's our time to have a total look at that. So if you look at Eisenhower, the reason we weren't, one of the first ones to get it, because of many of you that were here prior to the 2005 BRAC, about 2003 or 4, I don't remember the exact year, we had classrooms 1 through 6 were all in portables. So we decided as a community, well, that's just not right. So we had a bond issue and we fixed that problem. So you built new classrooms 1 through 6 and got rid of the portables. Well, the ask this year will be, since we're up and there's dollars available, so it'll be about a $4 to $4.5 million project. The way that the federal level funds that's 80-20 match. The public schools will come up with a 20% match. That's going to be roughly $800,000 or $900,000. The project's going to include these 6 new classrooms, new library center. There are going to be some additions, things that they're going to do to their bathroom, cafeteria, and things like that. But the media center is a great thing. Plus, there's some HVAC improvements, but mainly it's the media center and the library and the classroom. So what the Military Planning Commission is going to do, at least from our representative that sits on there, what we're going to do, and we'll try to present this Friday, is we're going to ask, we have $100,000 left from last year in the budget. There's about $150,000 this year, so we'll ask for that money, so roughly about $250,000. And what we're going to do, the city does not, we're the local government authority that would receive funds from the state through this Military Planning Commission. The dollars would come from the Department of Commerce to them, and then it would help the public schools fund their 20% match. We'll get about $250 this year. It'll probably be somewhere around $150 next year. So that'll be the portion that we'll give to this project. But again, it's about $4.5 million project. It'll double the size of Glenwood, which they were kind of running out of room.
Eisenhower.
What did I say?
Glenwood.
Okay.
That's all right.
That's right, at Glenwood. So anyway, that's the number one focus project this year that we're going to leverage dollars from the Military Planning Commission to move forward. Again, this year, a great dollars that are going to the effort out at Woodring, because we're tearing out the old south ramp, expanding it, adding new hangar for your facilities, but also a new joint use hangar. And of course, the radar that we're looking at, we can't do that quite yet because they're looking at a new, the radar that they had that we would have done previously. They don't make that anymore. So we're waiting for FAA to come up with what the new solution is there. But if you think about that, this is probably anywhere from 9 to 10 million by the time we get through on these projects. About 10 years ago, the wing commander that was here is Lieutenant General Russ Mack. You all remember Russ. He's the one that came to us and said, hey, if you expand the runway, here's what we could possibly do. Well, now we're at the point of here's what we will do.
Yeah.
Previous, the first part was to expand the runway, build the ramps, the joint use hangar and all of that. So at that time, we spent about right at 9 million. So if you think about it, this is where I say these are things that help you and I both, because that's about 20 million that's gone into our municipal airport. A huge improvement, including the terminal. So that's great. Plus, none of us are flyers, or at least I'm not, but I know they know how to use runways. And a fourth runway advance is a big deal. So So anyway, and it's a big deal for Enid to have them tear out the middle runway, because that's about an $80 million project or plus. So that's great. It's kind of hard to spend $80 million on a project in Enid, Oklahoma, so that's good.
Yeah, and extending the runway from 5,600 feet to 8,000 feet.
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever met a pilot that said that runway's too long.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's good on that level. Now on the federal level, we look at MILCOM projects, military construction projects. You always hear that. The last 10, 12 years, there hasn't been the ability to do what they call congressional ads or earmarks. They can now, congressional, House and Senate have new rules that allow them to do things. Before it was only if the project had to be in the Air or the services FIDEP, at least for the Air Force, had to be in the FIDEP, which is their 5-year plan. It was something, that way you knew it was something that was needed. Maybe you didn't have the dollars to fund it, but that was a way for your congressional district to bring that forward and possibly get it funded. Now there are some other things that the community, these community funded projects, it's, they call it their unfunded priorities from command. Commanders have the ability, because each command, you know, whether it's air combat, air education, air mobility, all of them have unfunded requirements that they have. This is the #1 priority project for Vance. It's #3 on the list from Air Education and Training Command. Well, so in the last couple of months, we've been working with our delegation to see if there was, because you never know how these are, but you got to tee it up. As Colonel over here told me one time, he said, you got to go big or go home. So at the end of the day, you and I all know, at least those of us that are on Vance Development Authority, we know this is one of our last really required major necessary infrastructure projects, because we have that facility, the squad ops facility, most of it's in temporary facilities, trailers, if you will, that's costing them about $500,000 annually. So we absolutely have to fix it, because if we were at a moment when they were looking at criteria on our base, we would be rated very low on infrastructure because of that, and because of the dorms. It's our other military construction project. But we work with Lucas and Mullen. It is in the budget process at the moment. It has been added. But right now is when the subcommittees on appropriation and authorization, they're working all this process. So what that means, it's in there, but you know, it's all the things that happen between now and the end of the year. So it's one of those things, you know, we'll fight as hard as we can. We've got backing on our delegation. They clearly, everybody understands the necessity of it, but the ability to at least get it teed up, it puts a lot of focus on it, whether it's the Department of Defense, Air Force, or Congress, because they have to pay attention to that when it's in there. So that, regardless of what happens between the end of the year on funding, it's absolutely the best thing for us to do. So we've got that going thanks to Mullen and Lucas, so we'll see how that goes, and I talk to them every day, and of course they started the process this week, so we'll have a lot more to come forward. Of course, this is good timing because we're going to be in D.C., so we're going to meet with a lot of the military and congressional leaders, so it's good to highlight. And I think those of you that maybe haven't been before, what you'll find out on the D.C. trip, that they know they have partners. So whenever we go in there, whatever it is, we're going to communicate to them. They know we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We listen to them. They may be giving us issues or problems that we can work on that we hadn't even thought of. So that is always a good communication. So those of you that are going, I know we talked to some of the councilmen, but if you haven't sent me a picture, the Pentagon folks need a picture. So it's in your email, so if you can get that sent to me very quickly, because they've got to send back to you before they let us all go. They'll send you an email where you've got to answer questions and all that. But on the Pentagon visits this year, I've set up, because these are the people that are going to make the decisions on the things that are important to us. So the first meeting that we'll have is with General Alvin, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. He knows exactly, in fact, I know Vance has been having to answer things today about what it is we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about all the things I just mentioned. We're going to talk about, you know, Call 8. We're going to talk about the MILCON project. We're going to talk about airspace. We're going to, you know, so there's several things that we're going to be able to talk to him about. The next people we're going to meet with is the installation, the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for installations. We're also going to meet for his leader, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Installation, Environment, and Energy. Well, the reason we want to talk to them is kind of the same issues, except that Secretary Moriarty is the one that makes the decisions on, from the Air Force to the SecDef, Secretary of Defense, on the DSIP project. So we clearly want to, and you're going to have yourself and whoever else there will be able to talk through why that's important. It was rated very high, as I said a moment ago, and so we'll do that. The other person that we're going to meet with after that, because our most important number one military value is airspace, and Ron Tickle was the previous director of the clearinghouse, which had oversight to determine what was a go or no-go on wind turbines to impact approaches to runway, military training routes, weather radar, and all that. Well, he worked for, Steve Sample worked for Ron. Steve Sample is now the director of the clearinghouse. Ron is now over for the Defense Department, real property management, acquisition, and things like that. So he has oversight of all of those type of issues, and then Steve reports to him. So we'll talk both with them, because anything and everything we can do to protect our airspace, because again, that's our number one military value, other than the men and women that fly the planes. So we've got to make sure we protect that. So we'll do that. The other thing that's important, so you all will know, Steve and Ron are the ones that came and engaged with myself and our Attorney General when we had to stop some development that was happening in the state before we got legislation corrected, so we didn't totally ruin or take away our military training routes and all that. So they're very familiar with us. They're very familiar with myself, because they are the ones that helped me write the legislation to get it passed, to get it done. They use that, again, in other states that have issues and problems, and we're not the only state that does, but some states choose not to do anything about it. We did, and so they're very thankful for that. So we will meet with those folks. I know that's a lot, but we have a lot going on. I expect that good things, I think, if not this year, but the following year on our Squad Ops facility. I think the last several years, since we haven't been doing earmarks or ads, there just really wasn't a way for us to do it, because as you all need to know, we're the smallest. I know Rob knows this, but we're the smallest of the small bases. We're like the smallest even in Air Education Training Command. So an $84 million project to rise to their priority is very hard. And we haven't had a regular program budgeted item since, I believe, the early 80s. So my entire time in Enid and to now, we've not had one. So all of the $450 million worth of improvements since the mid-90s to now have been congressional ads. So I think, though, the Air Force, we've made it very clear what we want to do. Here's what has to happen for us, and so they know what we're trying to do. So we'll see if we'll eventually get there. But with that, I didn't mean to be long, but there's a lot going on, and congratulations on the ATC Commander's Trophy. So, any questions? Especially from anybody going to DC, so.
Yeah. No, appreciate it, Mike.
Okay.
And just a couple more words on the what's called the Altus Award. That's Mike's favorite phrase. It's actually the community. It's an award given to the community that best supports the base in their area. While there's 19 bases, I believe, that are eligible in AETC, it's only been awarded 12 times. 2 of those were to Enid, Oklahoma. So I think we have a reason to be proud. The relationship we have between us and the base has been very strong for very long. Things happen all the time. I've seen young airmen out at one of the parks one weekend, and I recognized pretty much by hair, how long is their hair and what are they doing and all that, and I asked them what they were doing. And their first sergeant didn't tell them, their commander didn't tell them. They got together as folks that were living in a dorm and said, we live in this community too. We pick one park a month and we just go out and police up and try and make it look nice. Where do you see that? You don't see that anywhere else. So that's an example of people just doing things to be part of the community, and they do that. I see people like Don Johnson, who's kind of picked up the old class sponsorship program that Mike actually started. Mike and Marty Orley started a long time ago. And he's continuing on with that, and that's really going good, and he's moving that to expand in the enlisted ranks as well. Speaking of enlisted, we got Enlisted Appreciation Night coming up this Saturday night. You wouldn't believe how easy it is to talk to people in town when we tell them we're gonna do Enlisted Appreciation Night and ask them for a donation. You wouldn't believe how easy it is to get that. And it's because this community supports the base and they support us. So this is just an example that kind of shows us what we already know. So thank you, everybody that's listening. Yep.
Yeah, I had one more thing, and I mentioned this today. Rob was not there. But because everyone in this room, and there's been a lot of people that's been on Advanced Development Authority for a long time, and we purposely set that up for our protection enhancement effort because we needed people from all functions that we thought would impact some of the things that we were doing underneath the authority of the city. But I remember between 93 and 95, we knew, I think some of us had heard BRAC, but we really weren't quite sure what that was about. But I remember going on a trip, and Rob was on it, and we all go to the Pentagon, and we go in there. None of us, I hadn't been there before. He probably had. He was in the service. But we go in there, and we're meeting with the captain and major. And our whole meeting was surrounded on a big picture that was set up to show us a community was standing in front of a big tanker. They had loaded up this community leaders like us to go to a community that had their base closed. And of course, we all looked at each other because we were frightened, because we were like, well, why are they, the first thing they're gonna talk to us about Bracken, they're gonna show us a community that goes to another community to show them how to do what they need to do once their base is closed. So ramp forward to today, we no longer go into the Pentagon and talk to a captain and major, and I'm not diminishing that rank. But what we do is, and because we've done what we have done, and I say thank you to all of you, is because when you go in there, you know, we're meeting with leaders. We're meeting with the chiefs, the secretaries, and the people that absolutely have something to do with what we do. Same way with congressional leaders. And so it's a lot different than going in there and being fearful as going in there and working to resolve solutions or make things better. So again, I would reiterate what you said, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Coop. All right, item 3.3, update on current construction projects from engineering. Jason?
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. Just going to go over kind of what's under kind of the big things that are happening around town. Some of the stuff that might be causing a stir, causing a scene of people in town. So first big project, you know, is still not quite under construction, but there's some movement going on along Cleveland between the railroad tracks and Willow. OG&E has currently got it shut down. I don't say currently, they're closing it from 8 to 4 each day this week to relocate some power lines and stuff along that ahead of the construction for the widening of Cleveland. We've kind of been in the same phase for this, I think, since the last update that I've had with you all. It's with ODOT right now. We will be bringing the agreement between us and ODOT to you all in the next month or so to get that approved so that you can get out to bid. Everything else is ready to go except for that part of it and OG&E. Next project is just a little bit south of there, Cleveland and south of Chestnut. Ahead of a future project for detention, we're clearing a large amount of trees and shrubbery, and that's in the facility there. We purchased, the city purchased this property here, south side of the blue horse barn there that we all recognize, and that will be cleared, and then we're going to do some design work to install a new detention pond in that area. This detention will alleviate a lot of the flooding that occurs in both of in this property. I always forget their name, but the neighboring property here as well.
Hunter's Hills?
I'm sorry?
Hunter's Hills?
That's
Yeah.
Chestnut and Cleveland.
Chestnut and Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it works its way down there, so that's where it's going to alleviate a lot of that,
Okay.
a lot of the flooding that happens down there in that area. We started preliminary plans and things of that nature. It was so heavily wooded that we couldn't get it surveyed, so that's why we went ahead and hired crews to come in and clear the brush and trees and things of that nature ahead of actual design work. But, so that'll be set up and ready to go for next year's work.
Just so everybody will know, how did we determine the contractor was going to dispose of all those trees?
So actually what we did is we kind of offered it up to the contractor as kind of the, for their means and methods. And obviously hauling all of those, debris and trees and logs and whatever off is very expensive. And then obviously burning or taking it to the dump has cost more money. And so this crew that we eventually hired, they're experienced in this type of work where they dig a trench and they bury the debris and wood and stuff, and it burns, and they have like a jet engine, I think is there something of that nature, that it's basically a forced air fire that incinerates the wood and stuff. And so there's very little smoke except for startup and stop, and there's very little residual soot and ash that actually remains at the site. So it's a very efficient process, and we went through all the channels with the fire department because we know we were all very concerned about the drought and burn bans and things of that nature, and so we made sure all those hoops were went through and taken care of. But
I think it also, didn't it save significant dollars?
yes, I apologize, I didn't get to that point. Yeah, so since they did that type of work, since that's the way they disposed of the materials, you don't have to haul it off, so you don't have those fees. So it worked out really a large benefit for us in the long run. So to put in a little context, I think it was in the neighborhood of 40 or 50,000, and for the way we're doing it, and I think we had a bid for $500,000. So we were happy that we were able to find a different method.
So you're saying that the city saved $450,000?
Yes, sir.
Good work, engineering.
I think we both fell out of our chair when we first saw that. But anyways.
Good stewardship.
Yep. The next project that's impacting some neighborhoods is the Elm Avenue reconstruction project between Independence and Van Buren. Currently, they've completed Independence to Jefferson, and they're currently in demo / the dirt work part of Jefferson to Madison. That's probably going to take about another month of work to get that part done and reopened. So the next phase of construction will be what's in front of the school. And so we're working on our timing with the contractor to make sure that we're not shutting down that street during school. So it'll be after school is let out for the summer. If something happens and they get ahead of themselves, we were going to jump down, skip the school blocks and go down to Van Buren and start working our way back. But I think the way it's timed out right now, that we won't have to do anything as far as messing with the contractor schedule versus a school schedule. I'm pretty excited for this portion of it because we're adding a new drop-off lane in front of the school, so that it will not just help with the new road, but it will also help with traffic in that area. So opening up for a little more for traffic. So.
What's the anticipated time frame for completion? Is it in the fall sometime, or?
Yeah, that's where I'd venture my guess. Yeah, it'd be fall. Obviously, the full intention is to have those two blocks that are in front of the school done before school lets back in, obviously. And so I think it's been taking roughly 4 to 6 weeks per block. So I think it falls about right time frame this fall.
It's a fantastic looking improvement. I know we've had one ribbon cutting on a portion of it.
Right.
Mayor, with you and Commissioner Stallings. And I saw that the portion to Jefferson is complete. Looks good. Drove through the other day. Hope you get a chance to see it. And I know probably on one of these ribbon cuttings on this, Scott, we've got some big plans, don't we?
Yeah.
I think we do.
Involves the school system cooperating
I think they will.
with the band, but we'll see.
I imagine Mr. Garrison and Dr. Robertson will gladly accommodate us in what we would like to do. So, I think this is, oops, sorry. Excuse me. Another project that's kind of on the tail end, but is impacting some of the neighborhoods up in the northeast part of town, is the Birch Avenue reconstruction project. It's between 16th and 23rd, and they have completed up to Orleans. Is that right? Yes, up to Orleans. So 16th to Orleans is all complete, and they're currently working on from Orleans to Nancy Drive. Is currently the part that's torn out, and they're working on putting it back right now. It's our intention is to make it to 23rd Street. I've got some budgetary things that I need to check out before to make sure that we're going to get there or not. But all intentions are to make it there. So. I haven't seen the video yet, so I don't know if I want to talk about this one before I show the video, or which way? Have you seen the video, Mr. Gilbert?
I haven't, but I think it's wonderful. I saw the mayor's in it,
Oh.
and Jerry Allen's in it, so we know it must be good, so
You want to roll that beautiful?
I think that'll say it all.
Roll that footage. Yeah.
So there's 2 videos.
Okay.
So this is out at Kellett Park, if anybody was thinking that in their mind. So,
Hello, Enid. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm pretty excited because we're out at Kellett Park, and you can't believe all the things that we've been doing out here. We've got ADA accessible bathrooms and parking lot access on both sides of the park, and most recently put in some new lighting. You know, we're really interested in what's going on and making sure the quality of life things in Enid stay very good and get better every day. You can look around the town and see all kinds of things going on. Recently added more to the trail system, so that's up and running and good and getting bigger all the time. We've got this going, the soccer complex is coming on, David Allen Memorial Ballpark. Tell me that this community is not interested in the health of the occupants that are here. I couldn't be more excited. So today we're going to celebrate a little bit about the most recent thing, which is the upgrades to Kellett Park. So I wanted to give some people the chance to talk about that. I'd like to introduce you to the commissioner for this ward, Jerry Allen. Jerry, you got a few words. Good to see you, my friend.
Hello, Mayor. Good afternoon. Hey, this is a great event. We've been working a long time to get these lights out here. This is magnificent. It's going to last forever. It just improves the parks in Enid, and we're really excited that we were able to do this. So thank you very much, City of Enid.
Thanks, Jerry. Really appreciate your remarks. Next, I'd like to have the city manager come up and talk. Gerald Gilbert, can you come up for a few minutes and give us some words?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Hey, I'm happy to be here on behalf of the City of Enid and all the great work done by the engineering team, the contractors, the park supervisor and all of his staff, bringing this fantastic new improvement to the city. So the city is doing fantastic things every day for the people that live here or that use our facilities. This is incredible. This facility can be used in the day or it can be used in the night. We had some poles that were, well, let's just say they needed immediate replacement. They had not been worked on or refurbished in many decades. This is a fantastic improvement. So I just am taking this opportunity to say hello to everybody. Your city is working for you, doing great things every day. And remember, the best is yet to come. I'm going to be followed by Murali Kata, who is our Director of Engineering, who's going to tell you about all the specifics about this improvement. Murali?
Thank you. It's another fine, nice day. This project consists of a replacing of existing lights. the cost of the lights is about $600,000. We replaced the lights for middle field and north field. The best part is this middle field is a champion field, we call. It has a RGB lighting system. So when there is a home run, something like that, so they have a chance to turn on some music or lights along with audience clapping. Kellett Park also has a new ADA sidewalks and ADA parking lots. And along with that, Parks Department did work on the bleacher pads and bleachers.
All right, good job. Yeah, I think this is important. A lot of times, we focus on what isn't getting done, and we're not looking at what is getting done. So I think it's really important for us to maybe brag a little bit about what's going on and what we are improving in the city, because that's not nearly as visible sometimes as what needs yet to be done.
That's right.
So appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think with that, I think they kind of answered everything that I was going to speak towards, except for one thing on that wasn't mentioned in the video is this the new lighting system is actually a web-based controller, and so Corey with the Parks Department can actually turn the lights on and off from wherever he may be in his recliner at home or at the lake or whatever. So he'll be able to control the lights, or whoever it may be can control the lights on and off wherever. So, anyways, I think that's my last slide. Yes. Is there any other questions or anything that need to cover or talk about?
I just have one question.
Sure.
How was your game before or after the ribbon cutting?
Well, I had just raced in from Perry, and I didn't know that I was expected to speak, but you know, I'll go to the opening of an envelope and I'll say whatever comes to my mind. And
I thought you came from the golf course.
no, that's why I dress that way to work in Perry, white legs and everything. So you know, I just add a yellow vest and I can go anywhere.
The city worked that project, I think, for about 3 years or so. So that didn't happen all in 1 year, because it's a lot of money. The city has a lot of needs, but it's turned out really, really nicely. You guys did a great job in engineering, and I don't recall who the contractor was, but they did a wonderful job. So this park services largely the adult softball groups. So those folks, I think, are pretty happy with us right now. So we have work to do in other areas, but this one we feel pretty good about.
Yep, and I think of some of the improvements that we've done, given the ability for the high school age groups to be able to play out there in the evenings now, should draw. The movie always said, you build it, they will come. So
Well, that facility was in desperate need of a facelift.
Yes, sir.
And a great job was done out there.
Yes. Got a few more little steps to do, but they're small steps now. So,
And Corey will be glad to know that he can be on duty 24/7 with his phone
right.
to turn the lights on and off.
with that, thank you, everybody.
Artie, thank you. All right, that's all we have for study session agenda, so we'll take a break and reconvene here at 6:30.
It's comforting. No, you don't. And I've known her. I can't tell how long I've known her. Just forever. Nice lady.
Apologize.
So rich.
Linda, fill out